Today I want to talk to you about battleship positioning and why it's the most important thing for you to master in a battleship, and also one of the most difficult things. It involves a lot of map awareness, so you really have to get good and consistent at reading the map in order to be the most effective you can be at battleship positioning. But I want to take this game, because I think it's a good example of good positioning, and essentially walk you through my thought process and tell you why I'm doing everything that I'm doing. This game is going to end up being sort of a carry on my part, not really, but my two division mates are going to go down fairly early. They are Juice the Goose in the Belfast 43, and Isaac Impact over here in a destroyer whose name I forgot. But the first thing I want to talk about is your opening move, where you want to go on a map. Note that I'm in the center of the map, and I'm pushing toward still the center of the map, but near the Alpha Bravo flanks. I've got a broadside shot on this Colorado as he heads toward Charlie, and the value of this sort of centralized position is that on smaller maps like this, like Greece, you'll see battleships tend to prefer one flank over another. Nobody really likes to play the center. For some reason, they regard it as a mistake, but it's actually an advantage if you can play the center well, because it gives you access to the broadsides of all the ships pushing in to a flank early on in the game. If we had clearance over that island, if we go further a little bit more, we probably will, but we have access to all the broadsides pushing toward the Charlie flank and access to all the broadsides pushing toward the Alpha flank. Now, of course, we're giving them our broadside in return, so we are continuing our turn here to angle away from the threats on Alpha, and we've decided by our positioning that we're going to play Alpha for a little while. We got a good hit on the Azuma pushing in, and now we're going to take aim at the Odin. We probably should have shot at the USS Black that we saw 8 kilometers away from us a little bit earlier. A little bit of a misplay on our part. Anytime you see destroyers, you want to shoot them because they are, of course, a huge threat. But I think most people's instinct would be to push in toward this Alpha flank. There's a sense that, you need to win one flank or the other in a game, but I think things are a little bit more nuanced than that. We're able to play this flank without pushing into it. What would the value of pointing our bows at this Azuma and this Odin be? It would completely eliminate our ability to disengage. These are 3 enemy ships, keep in mind, and we are 1 Georgia. One of these enemy ships is a destroyer who can and has launched torpedoes at us. We already took a single torp. Our damage control is on cooldown. If we push in toward the Black, it's going to be easier for him to torpedo us. If we sail further away from him, it's going to be more difficult. Likewise, if we push in toward the Azuma and the Odin, it's going to be easier for them to focus us. But if we are kiting away, we retain our ability to maneuver to other parts of the map. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to stop the enemy from doing whatever they want to do as they push around the map. Note how far out the Azuma and the Odin have both gone. They were probably going to take a much more narrower angle in toward us and toward our other battleship teammates. Cut through the Alpha cap. But we hit both of them very hard. We checked their movements. And now they're sailing around the Alpha cap and getting further away from the game. Meanwhile, we've gone back to the center, where if we can spot the Odin, or if our team can, or the Azuma, we can still shoot at them, but we can also shoot at the broadsides of the ships over here, engaged with our team on the other side of the map. And this should always be your goal in a battleship. It should almost never be to just push bow in on one single flank and just bow tank the enemies there and shoot at them repeatedly until they die. No, you want to move your battleship around the map constantly, as much as you can, in order to reposition and constantly be paying attention to the map and looking for what the enemy is doing. You want to put your battleships on their broadsides, and you want to stop them from doing whatever they're doing. You also want to shoot at destroyers whenever you see them, so we spot the Kagero, and we're going to correct our misplay from earlier by taking a shot at him. Note now that we're pointing our stern toward the Bravo cap. The Odin or the Azuma shot at us, and we don't want to take any more chunk damage from them. And the rest of the enemy team is sort of pushing west toward the Alpha flank. The Black is pushing that way, the Kagero is. For all we know, that cruiser is, and that other battleship up there to the north is. So we're repositioning on the map. Our goal is going to be to turn in between Bravo and Charlie and get back in the center of the action relative to the positions of all the enemy ships. There's the Nagato out there, the sort of lone wolf who is going the other way. Even he's turning west now, and a Legalicinaire who should not be in this game because he's a tier 5 cruiser. We'll just pause to remove him real quick there and get the Confederate medal. Hopefully teach him a lesson about fail divisioning, maybe, who knows. But right now we're still spotted. We want to sort of disengage and reevaluate. Our concealment goes down to its normal detectability level after the gun firing penalty wears off, and then we're spotted. So we know one of the destroyers has a line of sight on us. It could be the Kagero from in between those islands over there. It could be the Black pushing back toward Bravo. Either way, our goal right now is to maintain our hold on both the Bravo and Charlie caps. We have a commanding points lead over the enemy, and so long as we maintain the majority of the caps, we'll continue to build on that points lead. But the Bravo cap is now starting to turn red, which means either the Black or the Kagero are inside. Ideally, my last remaining destroyer teammate, who is also a USS Black, would push in toward the cap in order to contest it. But he's going to take his sweet time in getting there, which is okay. We still have such a commanding points lead that even if the enemy team does flip the Bravo cap, which they're almost certainly going to do, it's still going to take them a while to accrue enough points to overtake our lead, unless they sink any of our teammates, which is always a distinct possibility. But the rest of the battleships on my team are playing really, really far back and honestly really passively, which is not necessarily a terrible thing because it at least means they're staying alive. I'm trying to direct the Black to get into the cap, and hopefully he's listening to me here. He can theoretically go in between those two islands there. We've spotted the enemy USS Black. He's smoked up on the other side of the cap, and the Kagero may be near or inside the cap to the north, but this Black should be able to make short work of the Kagero. The Azuma and the Odin that we saw earlier are so far out of position right now that they don't matter at this point. The Amagi over there toward the north, he's actually positioning his battleship, I think, fairly well in this game, and I think he's going to be on the top of the leaderboard. He's the biggest threat. He's got a hit points advantage over us, and we're going to have to be wary of his position at all times. Now, we're approaching the island. We are not going to push in toward where the Black was last spotted. We're going to get a little bit closer to our Black over here, and we know that that Nagato is still lurking around somewhere, so we're going to try to take a pot shot at him from the center of the map again. And again, you see that we're in the center, especially relative to where all the enemy ships are located. This is hopefully going to give us access to their broadsides, but it also leaves us open to being punished by other battleships that are aware, and that Amagi is the biggest threat in terms of battleships to me. At least I think he is. This Nagato's not even paying attention. But note that we are located and we were spotted by the sea while nothing has a line of sight on us. That means there's a destroyer directly in front of us by my calculations, and we need to be aware and wary of that. We really don't want to push in any further. We do manage to get vision of the destroyer. It's the USS Black, and that confirms to us for sure that the Black was in front of us, and so we can assume torpedoes are coming from that direction. Therefore, we make a turn in the opposite direction in order to avoid the torpedoes we know are coming. And that leads us into a scenario where we have to stop. This is generally what you want to avoid doing in a battleship. If you have to come to a complete stop, though, you want to do it on some part of the map where the enemy team can't focus you with more than one ship. So you see we've got an island to the right of our ship, which hopefully will protect us from the Odin, the Azuma, and the Amagi, all of whom are over there behind the island. And that should leave the Azuma over to our left, the only ship that can shoot at us. But we don't want to occupy this position. We want to get out of it. So we're going to start to reverse. That Kagero and that black are both still around, and anytime you are stationary like this in a battleship, you're a very easy target for destroyers to hit. You're much harder to hit when you're moving around, and you're also an easy target for the likes of Azuma. He can focus me down with his HE, or he can try to, and his HE is very potent. It can pretty much pen the Georgia anywhere, and it's got a high fire chance and a high alpha, so we can't sustain focus fire from Azuma HE for very long. But we have the black pushing in front of us now, and now that we have that, we'll have advanced warning of any potential torpedoes. So we're going to follow the black. We know after shooting the Odin that he's moved up a little bit further too, or actually he's been taken out. So there's nothing to worry about now as far as pushing in. And now that we know it's safe to do so, we can push in. But note that why and how we hesitated in the beginning. Now it's viable to push in. A second ago it wasn't. Constantly evaluate the map. Meanwhile, the Azuma is very low on health. The black has missed us with his torps, so we know it's safe to continue pushing as the Azuma goes down. The black's torpedoes will be on reload, and it'll be a second before he can get any more in the water. Now, we don't want to make a straight line toward Alpha through this gap here, because the black's torpedoes may or may not reload pretty quickly. I don't know. Instead, what we want to do is go dark and make a turn to the right, so as not to sail in a straight line across this gap and open ourselves up to black torpedoes. Plus, the black is getting in a fight with our black, and hopefully our black will prevail. Spoiler alert, he is not going to prevail, he's going to die, and then we get spotted by the enemy Kagero. And the only way the enemy Kagero could have spotted us is over these islands somehow. The Georgia is big enough that it can be spotted over low islands like this by a destroyer. So we suspect the Kagero is somewhere behind these islands, and we are located, which means we're the closest enemy ship to that Kagero, and that indicates to us that he is almost certainly behind one of these islands. So we want to be very careful. We're going at full speed. We're expecting that Kagero torpedoes may be incoming around this corner. So as soon as we get spotted, we know the Kagero is here. We should have probably started slowing down a little bit earlier, but we didn't. We are now slowing down to account for any torpedoes that might have been launched our way. And we're able to take out the Kagero, who just sort of sits there with no health left. And at this point, the game is essentially wrapped up. We still hold Bravo and Charlie, and we have an insurmountable points lead. The only way the enemy can win is if they sink both me and my remaining battleship teammate. Now, that battleship is pushing up on the black, which is maybe not the best idea. He could very easily go down to the black, but as far as we know, the black has almost no hit points left, so the black is probably going to lose his ship in the process of YOLOing our friendly battleship. And that Amagi is kiting to the corner of the map now, so he's no threat to us. There's really no reason to engage him. He's much more motivated to sink us than we are to sink him. We can simply turn around and rest on our laurels, take the win, instead of trying to win harder. And there's 30 seconds left on the clock. Even if the black takes down our battleship teammate, it's not going to matter, although it turns out the Vladivostok takes down the black. And that is the game. An example, I think, of pretty good battleship positioning on my part, and hopefully a little bit of an explanation about why you would want to position your battleship in the way that I did during this game. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the Georgia that you do this with. The Iowa and a lot of the Tier 7 battleships that aren't incredibly slow can and should position sort of this way. You can see the impact that we had on the battle. We were the most impactful player on our team. And yeah, there you go. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.